Ashley, your video's on.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
How y'all doing?
Good afternoon, Mayor.
I love this group. It's the most inclusive group for the task at hand that I think I'm a member of. So we've got all the right people in the room. I like that.
That's very true.
What's that?
I agree.
Yeah. So while everybody else in the country is trying to figure out who the next president is going to be, we're about the daily work of planning a cleaner James Island Creek and the water quality over there. So I'd like to call our meeting to order. And do we have some, I think everybody knows everybody pretty well. Do we have a new member or two on board that would like to unmute themselves and speak up and introduce themselves?
I think we have Garrett Milliken as the one new member that I am aware.
Yes, I'm real happy to be a part of this committee, so thank you. I also was wondering what subcommittee I was going to be a member of, so I'm willing to serve.
Well, great. Well, you're going to have your choice. We got three groups. We're going to get an update from them shortly: technology and citizen education, engagement, and policy. So we didn't really assign folks. We let them, as their interests dictate, we let folks volunteer on one or the other. So you'll hear a couple of presentations, and maybe that'll inspire you to one or the other.
Very good. Thank you.
Garrett, nice to have you on board. I saw your son, Max, last weekend. He's doing real well. Good to see him.
He's been pretty busy lately.
Yeah, that's good. Anybody else with us that's new?
Mr. Mayor, this is Ken Hill with Charleston Water. I'm showing up as Mark Klein because I'm sitting in Mark's office right now.
I see.
So I've been a member of the task force, but just haven't been able to join many of the meetings before. So I just wanted to say hey to everyone. Look forward to working with them.
Great. Thank you, Ken. So you're incognito today, or in disguise.
Right.
Something. I would bet everybody knows the famous Ken Hill. He's the executive CEO director of Charleston Water Service, and their cooperation in this matter and effort is really critical. So thank you, Ken, for your service and all the involvement that Charleston Water Service brings to the table with us.
Sure thing. We're glad to do that.
And I do see one person that I know was on a ballot this week, Spencer Wetmore. So congratulations to you for your reelection. We look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you so much.
Without any further ado, let's hear from our working groups and see what they've got to report, what they're working on. Ashley Callahan, do you mind going first to talk about our technology group?
Sure, not at all. And I believe this is the technical subcommittee. And yes, we met on September 14th, and Brett Champion and Matt Fountain mostly gave an overview of the MOU document that will be used as far as the call sharing between the city and the town in the county on the sampling, and then also the scope of the sampling that is an attachment to that MOU. I know the city of Charleston has already passed their version, and the town is going to be considering it at their next meeting, which is November 19th, coming up soon. So, so that was the main order of business for us. And then Baker Mordecai with Charleston Water Systems, he requested the island drainage study from us that we all, compiled with the help of Thomas and Hutton. And I believe, Brian, you have sent that to him. And so they're working together on compiling that data. Baker was interested in incorporating the existing data that we have in with the wastewater infrastructure data that they have. And then we talked a good bit about the testing sites. I think, it was Matt Fountain in particular, stressed the importance of keeping the testing sites as they are to satisfy the regulatory requirements that we have with DHEC, but we should look at some other sites as well. Denise Sanger with SCDNR had some great suggestions for looking at some other testing sites along Simpson Creek. And so I think one of the orders of, or one of the, short-term goals of this group is to look at some of those alternate testing sites. So those were our main order. That was the main order of business for us.
Terrific. And yeah, I was going to report, thank you for mentioning that the city has already approved our part of the MOU. Has anybody got an update on the county? Have they likewise taken it for approval or plan to soon? Maybe no one is on board from the county.
Sorry, Mayor. Sorry, Mayor.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good, sir. We have it we have it ready to go. Actually, what we were going to do was wait for James Island right now to actually get all three signatures on the same page, but we to make it look pretty, Yeah. But yes, sir, we are ready to go with it.
Oh, great. Terrific. So does anyone have any questions or comments, suggestions for Ashley and the technical group? Seeing none, we'll go next to Andrew Wonderly with the Citizen Education Engagement Committee. Andrew?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met, had a great conversation, and I think I'd categorize it as sort of a scoping sort of conversation where we're trying to figure out exactly what direction we want to take and what we wanted the work to look like. I think the discussion fell out along two lines. One is how to communicate with citizens and empower and engage citizens, to take action on their own right, but then also how to keep the public abreast of the task force action and processes towards the ultimate goals of the TMDL and ultimate goals that the task force set. So just to give you an idea of some of the things we discussed, and if anybody that was part of the conversation wants to jump in, please feel free to do it. But under the task force sort of action and process outreach, we talked about kind of a unified website where we could have things like timelines and explanations, upcoming action items, and lists of things that have been accomplished, just to keep the public abreast of all the good things that are going on. Also, we talked about how to do maybe some outreach to neighborhood associations and neighborhood groups, that sort of thing, and also kind of linking this information back to the existing TMDL, which is kind of what has sparked all this, right? The mandate from DHEC to do this action. On the citizen engagement and empowerment side, we got real granular and talked about some really kind of cool projects, things like storm drain marking, things like some of the opportunities that might exist around the town's new Dills Bluff Boardwalk, kind of defining and characterizing the drainage basin or the watershed with some signage and some outreach materials. I think there's some existing programs that are really great for homeowners, everything from the Carolina Yards program that Clemson has to the septic tank education and outreach materials that are being developed also at Clemson. Surfrider has a great program called Ocean Friendly Gardens, I think it is. So there's some great sort of homeowner scale things there that locals can do to, control stormwater on their own property, but also filter it before it leaves their property. I think one of the more interesting things we talked about was this idea of like James Island Creek culture, right? And, sort of creating the sense of pride and empowerment and ownership over the creek, what it's like, live like a local on the creek, learn to live with the water, learn to understand how it, how it impacts our lives and how we're all sort of connected to the creek. And the idea there would be to get folks, to empower folks to protect what they love and to be part of that process. So I think there's some real fertile ground there, some real rich ground that we can work on to keep folks educated. Also want to make a little plug about looking for opportunities around there to increase access to James Island Creek, whether it be through the boardwalk project that the town has, or anything like that we could do to increase public access to the creek. I think is going to go a long way towards that sense of establishing culture. So happy to take any questions.
Any thoughts, questions for Andrew? So here's the thought for you. Kind of ties in that your thought about a boardwalk or public space where people are going to be. I was in Spartanburg a couple of weeks ago visiting my daughter and grandchildren, and they have a wonderful linear park there along the old rail line. And I was really surprised to come upon a sign, kind of large sign that had a map of the drainage basin that happened to be in, and it kind of explained what a drainage basin was and all like that. And of course, this is a little different subject matter, but some explanatory public in a public place, signage like that, explaining, showing a map of the focus area and what we're trying to do and what people can do to get engaged and all. Anyway, I thought it was really cool.
I love those sorts of ideas, and I think we're ripe for a lot of those around James Island Creek. I think there's the creek winds all over the place, and you're always crossing it or next to it,
That's right.
or on a bridge, and so there's lots of opportunities. I think I'd love to see some of that get implemented through this work. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Councilmember Jackson.
I see Mayor Woolsey on the line on the meeting with us. Maybe this is a time to just put on the radar for everybody on this task force about our Brantley Park coming attraction, public park at the corner of Brantley and Folly. Do you want to give a little rundown on that, Mr. Mayor Woolsey or Ashley? Because
that I was going to bring that up, and so the city and the town are jointly working together on a park, Brantley Park, and that is on a little neck of James Island Creek. And so this is a great showcase, where the different governments are working together. The funds for that park for purchasing land came from Greenbelt, so it's also a Charleston County project as well. We had a little stumbling block on working on our dock, and we're hoping that all the city can work with the town to move forward to get access to the water. Maybe some, we're really looking for hopefully some kayak or canoe access at that point. I don't know if I've missed anything important. I guess Ashley can add that in.
What do you think the time frame is, Mayor, on that project? Will it be in 21?
Of course, we need approval by town council, but we're moving towards going to bid. And actually, right now we're going before city, technical review board? Is that right, Carol?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much done. We just have to submit our final, permit documents in order to get stamped approval. And that basically focused on the parking spaces that we're going to provide, very few parking spaces, and a part of the multi-use path will go right through the park along Folly Road. So we're trying to make it very engaging in terms of getting people on their bikes or walking, along the new path that will also get underway in 21, 22. So even without the dock, there's a long shoreline, along the property. So it'll be free to put up the signage and point out the natural features there long before we might have a stable dock for us to actually get out on again.
Hi, everyone. This is Patrick. Just a quick question. Is it the cost of reconstructing like an ADA compliant dock that's the holdup, or is it something more complicated than that?
Ashley, you want to answer that? It's not stable.
Yeah, it was because it was a residential dock. It's just structurally not compliant to hold the load that a public dock is required to have.
That makes sense.
Sounds like money.
Yeah.
And approvals, but.
Permitting. We'll have to have DHEC permitting, for disturbing the marsh again and all of that. So, but we'll be able to use the land long before we have to, worry about putting a new dock. In my personal opinion, I think it'll be a great way of getting people familiar with, the opportunity to be right next to the creek if they don't live anywhere close to one in their own neighborhood.
So, Andrew,
my own view is I just think that we, need the public to contact James Island Town Council and show their support for access to the water. And that's what's necessary. If we don't get a lot of public input, I don't think there's a majority on council that wants to spend much of any money on this project.
all right. All you town of James Island residents, there's a queue for you. And Andrew, I think that pathway would be a great opportunity for our first storyboard about our James Island Creek water quality efforts.
It sounds like a great location. Yeah, anything we can do to increase access, I think, is going to be good for the public.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on citizen education engagement from anyone? Okay. So next, Ross, Councilmember Appel, you want to talk about your policy group?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We met and talked and had a very wide-ranging discussion on a variety of policy measures that we could take to address some of these issues, everything from zoning and land use changes to septic tie-in ordinances along the lines of what Folly Beach has used over the years. Representative Wetmore has been an invaluable resource in that regard, given her time with the city of Folly Beach and their experience over there. And it's not quite an apples to apples comparison between Folly and the city of Charleston County, James Island, just due to some unique issues out at Folly Beach. But I think there are some lessons we can learn from that. And we look forward to exploring that issue in the future. But the real thrust of our discussion and subsequent discussion since our policy subcommittee meeting is centered around this concept of a watershed plan. And this is my cue to remind Andrew or Patrick to interrupt me if I start saying things that are incorrect, because we're starting to now get into some pretty technical grounds. But it's my understanding that we need to start talking about the creation and development of a watershed plan for many reasons. One of which is to, at a future point, qualify for a special grant that's issued by DHEC called a 319 grant, which could provide substantial resources for some of the efforts that we're talking about. That's number one, but also the plan is a good working, evolving document for us to understand what are the various action steps from a policy standpoint that we can take to start actually making the situation on the ground better. Everything from education to infrastructure to other types of measures. So I really think that ought to be a focus and priority for us in the coming days to start talking about the development of this plan and doing it in the most cost-effective, collaborative fashion possible. So that's what we've got going on the policy side. And Andrew, if you feel like it's important to add in some details on that, I think this might be a good time to do it.
Ross, I think that was great. I think it was great. I would just add, this isn't something I think we can delay. I think we need to act and act relatively quickly, because we need to make sure that we are eligible as soon as possible for 319 grant funds. So, to just reiterate what Ross says, that watershed plan is a precondition to seeking those 319 grant funds. We did reach out. I know, I think Kathy Woolsey reached out to Lisa Hajar, who's had some experience with both 319 and watershed planning and all that stuff through the Soil and Water Conservation District. I think we also connected with Wildlands Engineering, who has the expertise to be able to do this. And I think the goal here, in my mind, is to get this plan done, get it done as quickly as possible. There's likely a cost associated with that to get it done and get it done fast. I think that cost can be hopefully minimized as much as possible, in the sense that we have the collective experience and resources in here to hopefully keep that down. There shouldn't be a lot of new information that needs to be developed or researched or unearthed. I think we all collectively have that experience and resources amongst ourselves. So I would encourage the task force to take action to get that plan funded, approved, whatever we need to do to get it moving forward, and to get it to the point where we can pull the trigger on getting it done. So.
Okay, well, let's talk this out a little more if we can. Do you or anybody online have an idea of what a ballpark cost would be to produce a plan?
Patrick, you had reached out to the folks at Wildlands. Do you want to jump in, or I can keep going?
Sure. When it came up on the policy committee, how we started with contacting Wildlands was they did the Shim Creek watershed plan. And as everyone knows, Shim Creek faces some similar issues as James Island Creek. And they came back with a $45,000 to $55,000 quote based on the other 4 watershed plans that had been done in the harbor. And that was $15,000 less than the cheapest plan. And they said they could bring it in lower than that, if the group was able to provide a lot of the information. And like Andrew said, I think we could. That is a written scope that I can circulate to as big a group as we need to. I think the whole policy committee has seen it. And, the appropriate entity can follow up with them, or if there are other qualified entities out there. We just started with Wildlands because of Shim Creek. And I'm sure there are a number of entities that could do those plans.
And that was not part of the budget for the original MOU that the city just approved and is going to town and the county. Is that correct, Matt? In other words, this would be new money we need to find?
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor. So the original MOA basically envisions a total monitoring budget for the basin of roughly $50,000, a little bit less than $50,000 per year. So that's what's in the current MOA with the geographical split leading to proportional payments from the town, county, and city respectively. I think this is something, the 319 grant, the watershed master plans, I think that's something that's definitely worth talking about, definitely something that we want to advance for this basin. I think Andrew brought up some good points. There's a lot of data out there already between what we've done with Thomas and Hutton collectively on the island, what the city has done with AECOM and a portion of the basin, and then what the county has done historically with Wolpert on kind of similar basins, and is putting together with the monitoring budget for the basin as well. So I think we have some good options. We should certainly talk about what the best approach is and what elements we want to see in a plan, and kind of get that hashed out to make sure we're all working towards the same goals in a plan. And that'll also give us a much better cost rating if we need to go to a consultant, because we'll be able to say, here's exactly what we want to do in the plan, rather than sort of asking for an open-ended approach to a plan development.
Gotcha.
Matt, I'll just jump in here real quick. I think, the ultimate goal is that we, get a plan. And to be clear, the plan I think would be, we all call these working documents. It's something that can be, added to or improved over time. But I think the initial goal ought to be to get to the, the stage where we can seek funding. So we'll have the opportunity to go after that 319 grant program when it opens up in the new year. So the scoping process, I think, should be for whatever minimum standards we need to meet in order to be able to do that. And I think it's basically the EPA's 9 elements. And they have a lot of good guidance on the EPA website. So that would be my suggestion, is that we look that way with the intention of adding on and making the plan more robust as we go along.
And Andrew, the only thing I want to jump in on that is that part of the challenge with going that fast, which is not necessarily a inherent problem, is that 319 generally has a pretty significant match component to it for work. So, I mean, obviously we don't have that match budgeted at this point either. So we don't want to apply for grants that we can't show a match in funding for, because that would be the worst case scenario, right? Is to have to turn a grant back over again. That would kind of kill off our chances for future work in the watershed. So we do want to make sure that the 3 governments are all comfortable with what our approach is, comfortable with what matching money they can generate. Obviously, the city is just about to finalize its budget for the year over the next couple of months. The county runs on a July fiscal year. Actually, I'm not familiar with the fiscal year for the town. If you're on July also. Okay. So, I mean, I think it's definitely something we want to move forward on. We don't want to drag our feet because there is funding out there. We want to figure out what we can do, but we want to make sure we're doing the right thing, because that's a lot of money that we're all going to be putting together into this and having to find in our budgets.
Right.
And just to be clear, let me ask one other question, if I may. This is not a requirement of the DHEC mandate. This is just a tool for us to be able to get grant funding going forward. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So the watershed master plan is a requirement to get 319 funding, but the watershed master plan is not a requirement for the TMDL. There's a whole series of what we have to do from a TMDL, eventually moving into structural measures and other approaches, and this can help fund that. Those requirements typically don't start for about 5 years into your TMDL process. It doesn't mean we want to wait that long. I think we've all talked about that we want to try to do things faster in this watershed, but we're not on a regulatory time frame yet. We're on a kind of a aspirational time frame because we want to be doing the right thing in the basin.
Right.
A bit of nuance real quick there too, is that, the TMDL sets out the targets or the loading, the reductions that we'll need to meet in order for the creek to meet its water quality standard. The watershed plan is a more detailed document about how you're going to do that. And so I think while it's not required, I think it's an important piece in order to help us hit those reductions.
And Andrew, if I could jump in, this is Patrick. 2 quick points. One is the plan itself, the cost of the plan itself can be considered matching dollars for 319.
Okay.
And the other point that has been said to me, but I wasn't in the meeting, was, have we not been told by DHEC that there is a hole in the 319 map and it's around the harbor and James Island Creeks? We have a very good chance of getting it. So in terms of return of investment, we could get hundreds of thousands of dollars for a less than $50,000 investment before the summer.
My sense from that conversation, sorry, Patrick, my sense from that conversation is that DHEC is looking to fund projects in the Charleston area, and they have identified that as a sort of a donut hole in their 319 allocations.
Well,
Sir, Mayor,
I would,
Mayor
excuse me.
Woolsey has his hand up.
what's that, Liz?
Mayor Woolsey has had his hand up for a little bit.
Oh, okay. I can't see. Mayor, please, Mayor Woolsey.
I think we should at least ask Thomas and Hutton to, give us some scope and fee regarding the this watershed plan. It seems to me that their work with the delineation, has a lot of overlap with what we need here. But maybe they won't give us I'm glad we already have one proposal. Thank you.
Gotcha.
And wait, let me just jump in really quick from staff perspective at the city. Just if we do get into looking for options here, which we do need to make sure we're following our procurement processes, because if we're going to be funding this out of public dollars, we can't price shop professional service firms. We have to potentially go out for qualifications or use an existing contracting mechanism that's relevant for that and eligible for that task. So just a quick point of caution, I think you're right that there's certainly a real benefit for looking for what the best firm is to do the work, but we just do want to make sure we're following those procurement methodologies.
Well, that's absolutely.
I don't disagree with that, though.
I couldn't hear you, Mayor. What was that again? I missed that. So here we got this task force. That's another question. What is the best route for procurement? I don't know if that's a question we need to figure out right here, but.
Hey, Chris, does the county have on-call engineers? Is Thomas and Hutton already on that list for y'all? It may be that's one option for the procurement if you have a list of on-call. And then if you guys acted as the lead procurement agency, that might be one way to solve it. I don't know what everybody's codes say.
Yes, ma'am, we do. And it's really, we've got to walk a line of the use of the money and the requirement for the TMDL. And like Andrew did say, it could become even part of, if not the implementation plan, even perhaps one day. But right now, I think so yes, ma'am, to answer your question, we do have Wolpert on call as well as Wolpert too.
Okay.
Was this grant money be able to take people off septic tanks and put them on a sewer system?
My understanding is yes, it can be used for that. And I think the example was I think the example we discussed with DHEC was the Seaweed to Santee project that happened a few years ago, kind of North Mount Pleasant, through Ondaw in that area. And so I think it could be used either to, pay outright for connections or maybe even upgrades or replacements to tanks that are failing, but maybe don't have access to water and sewer, that sort of thing. So I think we could develop a program to target some of that with that amount, with the funding from the 319 program.
Okay.
So here's a question for everybody, and I know we're talking about getting a watershed plan that's not really required by the mandate so we can get grants, but do you think there's an environmental group or two that would be that issues grants that might accept the application, give us a grant to get the watershed plan done? Is there anybody out there y'all know of that we could ask for $40,000 to $50,000 to get the watershed plan done? It's worth asking.
Hey everyone, this is Patrick. I know just enough about this to be dangerous, like many things, but I believe, isn't there a stormwater consortium, the folks that put the billboards up on the interstate? I think that all the MS4s pay into. Am I way off that?
No, there is. This is Mark. There is. It's the Ashley Cooper Stormwater Education Consortium, and their funding is simply for public education.
Okay.
They don't do anything like that. And just, I was at the SCASM meeting today virtually. That's South Carolina Association of Stormwater Managers, and there was a presentation by Shane McCarthy of DHEC on the 319 implementation program, and they do have a septic program going in Spartanburg, I think it was, find and fix for septics that they're using 319 funding for. So this is doable.
Hey, Mark, Kim is on the line. Kim, would you like to take a go with that?
Well, first I'll say I'm glad Patrick saw our billboards.
Yeah. I'm paying attention.
But yeah, we're the consortium will definitely be involved in the process from an education implementation. And from what I understand, at least the grants that I've been involved in recently, almost all of them have a pretty strong, public involvement, community outreach component. And I think that's where, the consortium will really be able to plug in and support the effort.
All right. So any more questions, comments, suggestions about all this watershed plan formation?
Well, Mayor, I just want to give my sort of personal view of the task force and sort of our role in moving this along. I think when we established this body, we agreed, and certainly we have not been authorized differently by any of the sponsoring jurisdictions, that we would be a steering committee to make recommendations back to a procurement process that we would expect to be coordinated between the city, town, county, hopefully our utilities. But in terms of an action step that we could make today, I think just listening to everyone and hearing the policy committees, and I'm on the policy committee, hearing our consensus that it would be good of us to take a vote on recommending that we promote the procurement process for a watershed plan to the next level of activity, which doesn't start, I mean, it doesn't end with us. So we'd have to get into the procurement phase and the RFQ, or however we're going to handle finding the right, team to do the watershed plan. So I'd be happy to make that motion that as a group, as a task force today, we approve a recommendation to the funding bodies that we would procure a watershed plan post haste, as soon as we feel comfortable that we've got the right scope, and the reasons that we're going to do it would be to try to make ourselves eligible for the 319 grant, as well as any other funding that's out there that would benefit from knowing our game plan through a holistic watershed plan.
I'll second that.
We got a motion and a second.
Mayor Woolsey.
Yes, Mayor Woolsey, yeah. We register, you made the second. Any further discussion on that? I think we kind of talked about it already, but any further comments? And I presume that kind of the first step of that would be to follow Matt Fountain's comment, at least have the policy group, and maybe Andrew, you join them. You sound like you know a whole lot about this, to talk about the scope of what we're looking for in this watershed plan, maybe first before we get to the procurement. I want to make sure we don't put the cart in front of the horse, so we know what we're really trying to go after. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I'd be happy to have that conversation. Matt, if you want to connect offline, we can kind of chat through that maybe.
So this is Mayor Woolsey, Mayor Tecklenburg. So I think really what's going to need to happen is that the town and the city and the county are going to have to decide whether we take this recommendation or not. And, and work with Mr. Wonderly and our staff, Chris Wanamaker, exactly what we're looking for and who we would want to do it, and whether we can somehow, the three of us, and it'll be basically, I think, the way that things is running, the town and the city, if we can come up with $20,000 to $30,000 a piece, something like that is what they're talking about to get this done.
Understood. Anyway, we're not quite a governmental body like a city council. We're a task force, but we certainly want to have consensus moving forward. So I guess I will ask for, if there's no other conversation or comments, kind of a show of hands or an eye if you would like this recommendation moving forward. But Spencer, you want to add something to it?
Well, I did just have a question just as far as the procurement piece goes, and I'm sure staff can handle this much better. But if, to Chris's question about whether the funds have to come out of stormwater funds as part of the MS4, and that may help, with finding it, but it also is a limitation in some ways as well. So I just wanted to flag that.
Okay. Chris,
I guess just to clarify, when I said procurement, I meant it would go to the technical staff first, because they would have to agree on the scope, and then we would get the agreement from the jurisdictions as far as procuring and figuring out where the money's coming from once we have some cost proposals to consider, but based on a scope that our technical staff agree is the right way of going.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. We sound like we have consensus that that's a path forward. Y'all want to say aye or raise your hand or object if you don't like the idea? Anybody against it? All right. Well, sounds like we'll move forward and try to get that. I do want to just acknowledge we do need to get the existing MOU approved by everyone officially in a way first before we take any formal action. But then the next thing will be if Councilmember Appel, you get your policy group back together, maybe add whoever might be helpful to that, Andrew or anybody else, and talk about the scope of this thing, and then we'll look at the procurement side of it go after that. All right. So did your recommendation, Councilmember Appel, led to that discussion and recommendation? Did you have anything else to report from your policy group?
I think that about covers it, unless I'm missing anything that anybody else would like to remind me of from our discussion. I think we hit most of the high points, and there's a lot of different ways to get at this, but I think that the plan will be a guiding, focusing element to this whole thing, because we could just go off in a million different directions in a million different ways, but having somebody look at the issue holistically and provide us with a roadmap, I think will help really make our work a lot more efficient. But yeah, I'll send out an email to everybody, and we'll find another time to get together and keep the process rolling.
Good, thank you. So I'm just going to open the floor at this point of the agenda. Does anybody have any other items they want to bring up or discuss or recommend? The floor is open. Yes, sir, Philip.
There we go. Now I got it. I had to get unmuted. Good afternoon, everybody. So I wanted to pass along, I couldn't attend the last technical meeting, unfortunately, but before I get distracted before the next one, I wanted to share one out to the group. After our last meeting a couple months ago, I have had some conversations with some professional colleagues, as well as some folks within DHEC who prefer to remain anonymous at this point. But they wanted to kind of have me bring back one of the things that they saw when they were doing the study side of the creek. And that was, and this may be a conversation for the technical, but have we considered the fact that at mean low, the mouth of the creek has less than a foot of water at the harbor side? And once you go into the creek, it's 16 feet deep. And so therefore, we're not getting any kind of a flushing velocity except for the tidal cycle. That's a little bit into the weeds, but before I forgot about it, I wanted to share that out and see if anyone else on the technical side, y'all had discussed that or reviewed that.
So Philip, this is Andrew, Charleston Waterkeeper. I don't think we did discuss that. A really, really interesting question, looking at sort of flow dynamics of the creek and how that affects. And I think there's been some work done, some really preliminary sort of graduate level studies done to look at flow volume after rainstorms. And there's this theory that maybe the creek goes really low salinity and almost fresh during some heavy rainstorms. I'm a little surprised about the idea that the mouth of the creek's only a foot deep. I mean, we've been in there over the past 8 years on all tide cycles, and I've never run aground coming in and out of the creek. The only time I've run aground is when I've been over closer to the marsh and over closer to Plum Island. So I don't know what the current situation is there. I mean, it seems like there's plenty of water getting in and out of there on most tide cycles, but we could definitely go out there and take a look at low tide one time, see if we can get the boat stuck.
Yeah.
So there is quite a bit of flow coming out of there, but it's not a roaring flow like sometimes you see in other creeks. So definitely something I think might be worth exploring.
Yeah, I mean, this individual that shared it to me, he's an avid outdoorsman, and so he actually does a lot of gigging. And so he was telling me that, he's tried to explore that area and has tried to get up there at low tide and has gotten stuck numerous occasions. Now, maybe he just doesn't know the channel, and that could be a completely different conversation.
Yeah, usually looking for flounder pretty shallow too. And if he is, and I'm going to be crude for a second, the name for that whole area over in front of Plum Island is called Shit Plant Flats. And so there's a lot of folks that fish redfish over there, fish flounder over there, that sort of thing. So if he's a little more off to that side, it is really, really shallow. But if he comes into it, if he swings a little more wide, it might be a little, there might be a little more water for him. But yeah, there is a lot of shallow water out there for sure.
And the only other thing I wanted to share was when the samplers are taken and analyzed, are we looking at any level isotherms? Or are they composite samples that are blended together to represent a certain time over the given depth body of the water?
No, we're taking surface water samples. So between 0 or it's about 10 to 12 inches. So we take them, between the elbow and the bottle in your hand. So it's that surface, the surface level of water.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. That's all. Thank y'all.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Philip. You got some flounder for supper tonight? No. Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
Mayor, I wanted to call on our CWS friends. I think they've been doing some, thinking about all of this that I caught wind of the other day. So Ken or Mark or are any of you wanting to share your thoughts about should be doing our sampling?
Absolutely. Can everyone hear me okay? This is Ken Hill.
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay, great. Mark and I have been doing a little bit of work over here at Charleston Water that I would sort of categorize as foundational information that we'd like to share today, with the task force. And there are really two main items. The first has to do with some mapping that we've done. And very pleased to report that Mark and his GIS folks have worked in concert with the PSD, David Hopkins folks over there, and some of the county folks, and I think even some DHEC and maybe even the BCD COG folks. And we've come up with a very comprehensive map. We don't espouse that it's 100% correct, but we've got a really, really nice map put together, and we'd be glad to send this, to you, Mr. Mayor, or to Liz or to whoever to send out to all the task force members. But there's actually two maps. The first is a map that basically shows an aerial of the entire James Island Creek drainage basin, which is about 6.8 square miles. And then there's an aerial overlaid on top of it. And within that map, we also, a third layer that we've thrown on here is the existing gravity sewer systems within the James Island Creek drainage basin. And then we identify them color-coded wise as to whether those sewer lines belong to the James Island PSD or to Charleston Water System. And what that immediately does is visually it lets you know where there is public sewer and where there's not public sewer. And you can see houses and you can see developments and that sort of thing. And then the second map is actually more of the same, but it's got a separate layer on it. It was too busy to put all on one map, and really shows all of the existing zoning, current zoning, approved zoning requirements within the drainage basin, whether it be in the town, the city of Charleston, or the county, so that we know pretty much where the commercial and residential areas are. And then a third thing, and maybe one of the more important things on this second map, we identify every parcel of property currently shown on the Charleston County database, property database, and where there are existing dwellings with no public sewer, we put a little black dot right in the middle of that parcel. And that tells us what we believe to be existing properties that are served with septic systems. So just by looking at these two maps, you've got a lot of really what I call foundational information to take a look at. And I'll just go ahead and tell you, we identified in this mapping what we believe to be approximately 340 potential septic tanks within the drainage basin. And it's very interesting to see where they're located and, that sort of thing. And so again, we would be more than happy to share those, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Jackson, with however you want us to do that and distribute that to everyone on the committee. Because again, I think it's pretty foundational to see this information.
Great. If you'll send that to me and Liz, we'll send it out to everybody here. That'd be great.
Awesome. And then the second thing, and this is one thing that, again, I believe to be foundational, and Mark and I believe to be foundational, that we might throw on the table to sort of kickstart some additional data. And I've talked to a couple of folks about this, but we believe that in order to solve a problem, you must first clearly define it. And one thing that we think might be of value is to go in and use some technology to actually do what they call bacterial or microbial source track or source testing. And obviously I'm an engineer, not a microbiologist, but basically what it does is you can actually take the samples in the creek, and these would be the enterococci bacteria, and there are technologies available today that can give you some crude estimates as to whether the bacteria are from human or from animal origin. The enterococci bacteria, as y'all, I'm sure, are all aware, are found in warm-blooded animals, but they actually have the technologies now where they can even delineate what type of warm-blooded animal. They can differentiate between deer and raccoons and squirrels and birds and that sort of thing. And so we just thought it would be an interesting study, if you will, to go in and take a look at that to see what we're really dealing with. I thought the comment made a little earlier about maybe the creek doesn't get a lot of flushing and that kind of thing might actually be part of what's going on over there in the creek. We don't really know that. Let's see what it tells us and whether or not we can actually percentage out how much is human origin and how much is animal origin. We don't know, in my view, until we test it and we check it out. And so Charleston Water is willing to kickstart that, if you will, with a $5,000 donation, if you will. And we were hoping that maybe the proper approach, if the task force was in agreement, would be for Mark and I to maybe get with Andrew, since they do periodic testing, in the creek, to get together with him and sort of develop some sort of sampling plan. We've identified 2 laboratories that do this type of work and are certified for this type of work. The samples are not cheap, but we think we could get a dozen or so samples at our two locations and have them funded for that amount of money. And then at least we'd have a little bit better idea of what we're dealing with. And that would be some terrific data in our view to have in our pocket when we initiate the watershed plan with our consultant, whoever that may be. So if there's no objection to us doing that, or the way that we have proposed to go about doing that, we put that on the table for the task force to consider today, and we'd be more than willing to get with whoever's interested. But I was just thinking the Charleston Waterkeepers would be, probably the lead agency. We could work with them, develop a sampling plan. We need to decide whether we want to do before and after a rain event on an incoming tide, an outgoing tide, those types of specifics, which we don't need to get into here today. But we think it would really just bode well for us to know what we're trying to solve and what best management practices might be we might need to concentrate on if we know really what we're dealing with. So I'll leave it at that and turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Ken, I think that's very gracious of you. Thank you. That's a great offer. And I didn't know that delineation of testing was available. So I think he's absolutely right. It'd be great to know just how much of our bacteria sources are human versus more natural, so to speak.
Right.
Anybody got
Mayor, do Do you mind, Mayor, if Chris and I jump in briefly on that one too?
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
And I'll let Chris probably speak to it, but I think it is a great idea, and it's something that is included in the task work we have with Wolpert for the monitoring within the basin that the city passed at council and that the town will be considering, the county's kind of managing. So I'll let Chris add a little bit of what we've looked at, but we could certainly use some funding because as Ken mentioned, it's quite expensive as type of testing. So that might let us do more and expand out our sampling methodology. But Chris, do you want to just add anything that I'm missing on that one?
Sure, that it's an option already within the scope. So it is there, ready to go if we, and I think that we should probably bring it up again at the technical committee and discuss this. Absolutely.
Great.
Which is good because that shows the benefit of this task force, that we're all coordinating and getting a chance to talk to each other about all the different ideas we have. Because I think a lot of us have similar ideas. So it's nice that we can all work together and make it as efficient as possible.
Okay, very good.
So we're already lined up to be able to use your funding. We graciously thank you and accept it. Thank you, sir.
Put the check in the mail, please.
And I'll also recognize Kathleen Wilson, who's on the board of Charleston Water Service. Thanks for your support and being on the task force. And Kathleen, would you like to add anything? Oh, you're on mute.
There we go.
There you go.
Ken and I had talked about this briefly, and I think Ken will probably have to come before us as a technicality to get it approved. But I think it's a phenomenal way to figure out what we're up against.
Great, thank you. All right, well, thank you, Ken. I appreciate that report and that good work, and I'll send out those maps once you get them to us, and we should be able to move forward on that testing as well. That's great. Any other comments, suggestions to come before our task force today? Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for the Charleston Water Systems for the information, the mapping, and the offer for assistance. This actually brings to mind another thing we talked about in the policy subcommittee that I failed to mention, which is the idea of mandatory sewer connection ordinances and measures, and having this visual depiction of where the septics are, which jurisdictions they're in. You know, is there sewer available nearby, will really help us get a better understanding of what those regulatory tools would have to look like if we were to go in that direction. And that's obviously not a measure we're going to want to lightly tread into, but having all the information and being very clear about what we're talking about will allow us to make some smart decisions. And you never know, maybe some of this 319 funding will be able to help effectuate some of that stuff and get people tied into sewer. Because really, at the end of the day, this is a problem that ought to be solvable through infrastructure. I mean, I think that I'm not suggesting this, but we could have millions of people living on James Island and no fecal bacteria in the water, right? It's just a simple question of infrastructure, making sure we have the right stuff set up and the right infrastructure maintained. That's what it's all about. So look forward to seeing all these pieces come together, and this group's continued great work.
All right.
Mayor, another good segue. I see Kathy Woolsey on the meeting, and she sent out an email today, but because we're live to the public, I was hoping we could ask the PSD to make their very great report about the completion of the run that comes across to Camp Road, to Central Park Road.
Miss Kathy? You're still muted.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Got some feedback here.
Echoplex.
Yeah. All right. I would like for Mr. Hoffman to explain it. It was his project. He was in charge of it. And but let's see if we can get David Hoffman to tell us more about it. He's our wastewater director.
David?
They can,
Well, we completed our pump station 2. It's up and operational. We should be able to pump about a third more water than we were able to in the past. It was a duplex station. Now it's a triplex station. Bigger pipes. It goes all the way to Plum Island, bypassing pump station 1 now, which will save us some energy costs. So we're real excited about it. And we really don't want a big rain to test it, but we're ready for it if it does.
Great. Well, that's great news. Terrific. The less overflows we got, the better, right?
Right.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else to come before us this afternoon? Thank you all for being part of the task force. We're not going to meet again until next year, January 7th, and about the same time, 4 o'clock on that Thursday. So I guess this is the first time I've even thought to say this, since we have Thanksgiving and the holidays. Happy holidays, everyone. If I don't see you before, and we'll get back together January 7th. In the meantime, we'll complete getting our MOUs approved. We'll start looking at the watershed plan scoping, and we'll come back to y'all. We'll share the maps with everyone, and you could start working on some zoning changes, Councilmember Appel. So anyway, we've got plenty to do in the meantime. I appreciate everybody's interest and work on this. It's going to take us a few years to really comply with the mandate, but we're already making some progress. So thanks, everybody.